What is up, survivors? For today's mob review, we're going to be talking about the best eggs mod. This one was suggested by one of our community members, and I'm just now trying to get caught up with a lot of these suggestions you guys have been tossing my way. So thank you, Nate, man. I appreciate that very much. Best eggs. This is a pretty useful, amazing tool if you enjoy breeding, but you hate trying to breed for stats the hard way. So to fully explain how this mod works, I'd have to explain to you a little bit of the breeding concept. And if you haven't watched our 101 as far as how to breed animals, the situation is thus, right? So let's say I have two raptors and they're both level 225s, as you can see. Because let's say they spawned in at a level 225, right? So every raptor will have a base 1 stat, a level 1 stat, they'll all be the same. But every 225 might not be, because the game allocates random levels to random stats. Stats are somewhere lower and some are higher. So you might find a level 225 raptor that isn't quite as good as perhaps maybe a level 200 raptor, mainly because the levels were randomly distributed different ways. Now, the way to get around this and to breed really good, strong creatures to use for boss fights or just PvP or what have you is to tame multiple very high level critters of the same type and then interbreed them with the stats that you want. So essentially what I took is I spawned in a bunch of raptors. These guys are kind of useless, sorry guys, but these have higher stats than the rest of them in certain areas, and I'm only using these certain stats as a reference point, not necessarily something that you would want to do. Like this one has a higher food than everybody else. Why you would care about that? I don't really know, especially not with raptors anyway, but it's the point. You guys are loud. I'm trying to... Anyway, anyhow, so the idea behind this is that, so let's say I have this male that has health and this female that has weight, and I breed these two. Now, you have a slightly higher chance of the higher stats being passed down to the baby, and you have a slightly lower chance of the lower stat being passed. So in an ideal setting, the offspring of these two raptors would have 1840 health and a 232 weight. It would have the highest levels in those two categories, right? And then I would take, I don't know, something like this, and I would try to do the same thing here. The ideal situation would be a 750 and a 6,000 in food and a 750 in stamina. And if I wanted to get even more ideal, we would get a male and female. Then we would take those two and breed those two together to get all the stats to pass down. And what happens is you quickly get animals that have all the higher base stats, and they end up with a higher level cap than they've already started without imprint, without leveling, without anything. It's very easy to get animals. Well, it's not easy. In theory, it's easy to get animals well over, if you're dealing with 150 max level dinos, it's not too hard to get over 300 level animals if you just breed them the right way with the right stats. Now, this guy, this is where this really comes in. With all that being out of the way, we kind of had to give you a little bit of context in case you didn't know exactly how the breeding works. First and foremost, the station is crafted on your person, and it is under your structures, and it's going to be under your metal. It's going to be sitting right here. It's going to take crystal, cementing paste, metal, obsidian to make. We can check it here as well. Best egg maker is unlocked at level 1 automatically. You're not going to have to worry about this. It does have an I&I options that you can change if you decide to do so. I did not. I'm running with stock I&I settings. Right away, we have an option to change quite a lot of things, and if you hold in E, you have options for plenty of the stuff. A, you can pick this thing up, move it around, you can rename it, you can access its inventory, blah, 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 blah. But primarily, we can have it auto-gather eggs, we can have it auto-gestate eggs, which means that it like auto-incubates them. We can show the insulation range, we can show the range of them, and we can toggle it whether or not to grab Bloodstalker eggs or whether or not to grab Water Dino eggs. This is awesome. So right away, you got an egg incubation station that you can pick up and move, and that will auto-gather eggs for you, which is pretty awesome. Now, if we open this up, this has already grabbed the 2 eggs that I mentioned. So I bred these 2 once, I bred these 2 once, and these are the eggs that came out of it. Now, it's already dropped the incubation down to 1. It'll take it down to 1, and then you got to hatch the rest on your own. But the way that this works, and it does quite a lot of other things, but the big thing about this is if I select this egg, it now tells me what's going to happen. So in this bottom, it shows me my mutation range, and obviously these are wild and I just spawned them in, so there's going to be no mutations here, and it's not passing any down. But it does tell me what's going on with all of these separate levels. So what we have is basically what this is doing is it's engineering the egg predetermined so that all of the higher stats carry over. That's the whole point of this, is that all the higher stats immediately carry over, so I don't have to play a gamble of what's going to work and what's not going to work. So basically, if I do this and hit mate best egg, it immediately pushes all of the high stats into this egg. So I don't have to sit there and breed them over and over and play that roulette game of whether or not I'm going to get the stats that I want to carry over or not. Essentially, this just speeds the process up that would normally just take you a long time to do. And it's really odds. You're playing a game of odds, and this machine is taking all the odds out, and it's saying, personally, I think the idea behind this mod is you took the time to tame all these high level critters with the high level stats. Why should you have to spend hours and days, and especially on official settings, days and days and days and days and days to try to get those stats to carry over? This makes it a heck of a lot easier. And you can do this with any of those eggs. And it also picks up the creatures in range to pull those stats from. So it's very important that you have the parents of whatever that egg is. The parents are nearby so that it can pull those stats and use that as an example to figure out exactly what's going on with the egg. And as you can see here, same thing. So we have a female with a weight that had a 232 and a male that had a health out of 1840. So it's going to pull the high health and it's going to pull the high weight. All we have to do is select make best egg, and it does that. You can refresh this to refresh the animals that are in range to make sure it's pulling the right ones, and you can refresh all of them if you choose to. This toggle details is kind of awesome too, though. So this tells you, if I select this egg, it tells me all of the stats of the mother and father. Every single part of it. Every single part of it, down to the color region and what color they're using. This first number indicates the color region. All creatures standardly have color regions between 0 and 5. Sometimes creatures don't have every single one of them, but those are the ranges that they fall in. The second number is actually the color that corresponds with that. You can find those on the Ark Gamepedia site. Every color has a number associated with it, and it's giving me the number and the region already. It's also lining up for me which stats are higher than the other. So this one has a higher stat here. It's telling me which creatures have the higher stat. The green indicates that. Matrilineal between patrilineal, obviously. And it can also pull all the information for other dinos that are actually in range as well, which is pretty cool. Another cool thing that you could do is actually, so here's the baby color regions. So that tells me when this raptor hatches, these are going to be the color regions. I can change them. I could change these all day long from the standard colors, right? So I can't go outside of what the standard colors would be, but I can change the standard colors all I want all day long. And I can reset them back to their default. Pretty awesome to be able to get the exact colors. This is so cool for a lot of different reasons. First and foremost, like I said earlier, this makes all of the breeding significantly easier. And I think we can all agree that if you're trying to go this route to breed stats down to try to get those super Ark creatures, this can take a considerable amount of time. And while I do kind of like a challenge and I don't mind grinding stuff out, I do mind it depending on the settings. So depending on the settings, I think this is a pretty cool feature. I mean, something that incubates your eggs for you, and then this auto taking of the higher stats into the egg it just saves you so much time. It saves you so much time. You're still going to go out and tame the animals. If you're smart, you're still going to go tame a bunch of them. You're still going to try to get all those high stats. You're still going to be doing all that footwork. You're still going to be doing all that groundwork. This sitting and waiting and feeding is pretty much rinse, repeat over and over and over again to try to get the stats that you want. And then what do you do with the ones that don't have the stats that you want? Well, you kill them off, or you give them off, or give them away, or something like that. And you end up with a cryopod or a cryo fridge full of animals that you don't want anything to do with, or you've killed 1,900 of them for no reason because they simply didn't give you the ones you were looking for. This eliminates so much frustration. I can get behind this all day long. This is awesome. I love this one. I'm surprised that I haven't seen this one already, because I constantly perusing the Steam Workshop for Ark mods, and I don't know why I hadn't fallen upon this one before, because I get a fix to breed. Like usually if I'm playing on our community server or a solo gameplay or just in general, I usually like to go through the fine-tuning breeding line of at least one type of animal, and this would speed that process up tenfold. Not only that, but it just makes it less frustrating. It also makes it a lot easier if you're newer to this breeding and then have access to mods. If you're new to how the Ark breeding stuff works in general, this makes it significantly easier to figure out. The color region thing is also pretty awesome too. This is just an added bonus to me. I do like being able to pull all the stats in the general area. I like this, and this is pretty cool as well. I like being able to see all the stats of all the creatures, and I like that it gives me the amount of levels that it has in that particular stat versus what the actual stat is. It's just easier reference point. This is nice for a couple of other reasons. I mean, if I sit back and go one by one and go, all right, well, this creature had this creature had that, I could very well miss a number by accident. But if I pull something like this chart up and I put all those creatures in range of this thing, I can go through this chart and go, okay, well, this one is this one is this one is this. I can see all those higher stats and I can see what they're supposed to look like. And I can also get a pretty good idea of where I'm going to be as far as higher levels later on down the road. This is amazing. I love it. I think it's absolutely awesome. I don't know how I haven't stumbled upon this before, but it's really, really cool. I don't have any bad things to say about this at all. I could see maybe honestly, I was about to say that on a PvP setting, I could see it as being kind of a pain in the butt, but honestly, no. because everybody would have access to this. Everybody could be doing this. So, I mean, it's kind of a level, it equally speeds it up for everybody. So I don't see how this is a bad thing on any server, regardless of what you're running. I think it honestly just saves some time. Honestly, you know, if you still wanted that RP feeling of breeding the animals and doing all that stuff, you still have your maturation, you still have the babies growing up, you still have all the imprints, you still have all that other stuff to do. You're getting rid of the playing the lottery of whether or not your stats are going to carry over. Being able to change colors is awesome. Sometimes you tame creatures that you love the stats and you're like, the color is atrocious, and I hope this doesn't pass down to the offspring. Well, now you can keep that from happening, which is pretty neat. I got no bad things to say. It's a small mod. It works really simple. It seems like it stacks well with a lot of other mods. And yeah, and that's it. Best eggs. We'll also have a link to the mod in the Steam Workshop page, so you guys can check that out at your leisure. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you on the next.